Welcome back everyone. Today I want to talk about reverbs. Which plugins do I like? How do I use them? How do I apply them in a session to my music and why? Before we get started, I just wanted to say I have started adding extras to Buy Me a Coffee. You can follow me there if you want to get notifications. It will be stuff that belongs to certain videos or I'm still coming up with other things, but you can follow over there to get notifications for whenever I add new things. I'm adding new things every couple days now, so it's becoming a thing. Also, I've started reposting old videos into actual posts because we've had such a huge audience growth that I've seen some people ask questions about things that I've already made a video about. So I just want to bring attention to some of those videos where just questions come up all the time. I've been doing this for a couple years now, so there are a lot of topics I've already covered, and so I'm just going to use the post function to bring those videos into the forefront again. So reverbs. We basically have two kinds of software reverbs: convolution reverb and algorithmic reverb. Convolution reverb uses impulse responses from an actual environment to create the reverb. You can kind of think of it like sampling, but instead of sampling an instrument, you're sampling a hall. It can sound very realistic, but it does take up a lot of processing power. Algorithmic reverb creates echoes based on mathematic algorithms to simulate delays that occur in reverb. So it's entirely artificial. It uses very little CPU, so in that regard it might be better if you have a slow computer. Algorithmic reverb is probably better for you, but it can sound less natural. I've actually heard from several score mixers that they do like to mix a convolution reverb with an algorithmic reverb to get the best results. Because convolution reverbs can sometimes sound a little bit stale, and then the algorithmic reverbs can add modulation and color and a little bit of life to it. But so let's get into the ones I like, and I'll link to the products in the description. So one reverb that I've probably used for the longest time is the Lexicon PCM. It's an oldie but goodie. It's an algorithmic reverb, so it's pretty light on your computer system. And I think it has been my main reverb for a good decade now. It comes with a variety of reverbs: a hall, a concert hall, a chamber, room, plate, vintage plate, and random hall. I believe random hall is discontinued now, which is kind of a shame because that was one of their best things. They all have a variety of presets. I mainly use the hall for orchestral stuff. You could also, I think, use the concert hall as well. And I very often use the plate for my vocals, especially the multi-vox plate. I also sometimes use the vintage plate if that's the color I'm going for. And random hall is kind of like a very ethereal kind of reverb. Like if you want that ethereal solo voice, or you want that, you know, ethereal woodwind or something, that's really a cool reverb to use. So here's a couple of examples. I'm applying all the examples to my Irish flutes, but if you go to their websites, to their product websites, you will find a ton more examples, of course. The price varies depending on the website, depending on where you buy it, but it's usually a couple $100. Then the next one we have is Valhalla Room. I generally love this company. They create very affordable, high-quality plugins, no frills, no nonsense. It's just a very clean, very easy to use thing, everything that they create. So the one I want to talk about now is Valhalla Room. It's an algorithmic reverb that comes with 12 original reverberation algorithms, and then you can choose what kind of space that algorithm is supposed to simulate. I got this one actually as a parting gift when I did some tech assisting at Steve Jablonski's studio, and they were using it there and I loved it. And so once my job was done, I was gifted this plugin kind of as a parting gift. But during my internship at Remote Control, I did have a sit-in with Alan Meyerson. I saw him use that one too. So it is widely used, even though it's so affordable. Don't judge it. It's being used by A-list studios, A-list score mixers, so clearly the quality speaks for itself. It's very light on CPU, so also great thing if you're working from a slower machine. Get this one. It retails for $50 and it also has a demo version available if you want to try it out first before buying. Then we get to a newer reverb that's on the market, which is Cinematic Rooms by Liquid Sonics. This is also an algorithmic reverb. When I scripted out this video, I started to realize that I vastly prefer algorithmic reverbs over convolution reverbs. I was not aware of that, but I guess I learned something about myself from this video. I got this last year during the Black Friday sale because it seemed like everybody was using this. In general, everybody was using Liquid Sonics all of a sudden. But this one in particular was being used in audio post-production because of its surround sound capabilities. And it's not surprising because they worked with engineers like Alan Meyerson to really tailor this to the exact things that we need. But of course you can also use it in stereo. That's how I use it. I don't work in surround. Most film composers don't work in surround. I love the interface. It's such a clean design despite having so many different parameters. It has a ton of presets, even a scoring stage preset. The Pro version also has some more unique built-in features like ducking, gate, and compression. And it just sounds fantastic right away. This is definitely now a mainstay in my template. It comes in a standard edition and a professional edition. The standard edition costs $199. The professional edition costs $399. And this one also has a 14-day trial version if you want to try it out first. So while I was on their website during Black Friday and I wanted to just buy cinematic rooms actually, I kind of started reading around and I was like, well, Seventh Heaven sounds great as well. But if I buy the Pro version of both, then I could just buy the everything bundle with the Black Friday sale. So I actually bought everything. But so the next one I want to talk about is Seventh Heaven, also by Liquid Sonics. And I haven't made up my mind yet, but I think I'm liking this more than Cinematic Rooms. I don't know why yet, but when I apply it to my mockups, I think I always kind of gravitate more towards Seventh Heaven than Cinematic Rooms, which is hilarious because I feel like Cinematic Rooms was more specifically made for what we do, but hey, I mean, it's a question of taste. So the reason why it sounded interesting to me when I read about it on their website is because this is a simulation of the Bricasti M7. It's one of the most popular and also a very, very pricey hardware reverb on the market. You will hear that one on so many film scores. It's so widely used. And so they basically were like, well, what if we try to create a software version of that? It's technically a convolution reverb, but it uses Fusion IR technology. Now, they have an explanation on their website, but it's intentionally vague. Like, I've read through it so many times in preparation for this video, trying to understand it. It's just word salad. It's just made up words. Like, you can go to their website and read about it and tell me if you understand what it is that they actually did here. I thought initially that the Fusion IR is basically mixing convolution with algorithmic reverb so that you have a convolution reverb, but it acts like an algorithmic reverb and you kind of get the modulation and the life into the convolution reverb. I don't know if that's what's happening because the explanation is so vague. This is just my assumption. If you work at Liquid Sonics, please enter the comment section and let us know, because I don't know if I'm understanding this right. But either way, it sounds fantastic. I'm gathering they also changed the way in which they capture the impulse responses from the hall. At least that's what I'm gathering from their explanation, but I don't know. But what really matters is it sounds absolutely fantastic. So maybe I don't have to understand how they did it. It's fine. So it kind of acts like an algorithmic reverb in the way that it's flexible, and it comes with a variety of Bricasti presets and a ton of parameters that can be fully customized. The amount of customization and also presets depends on your version, because they once again have a standard edition for $69, which is very affordable, and a pro edition for $299. And they also have a 14-day trial for this one. So as you may have gathered, since I bought the whole Liquid Sonics bundle, I've tried out all of the other reverbs as well. Another one that I use a ton is Lustrous Plates. It uses Fusion IR synthesis. Again, no idea what that means. I think it means they mixed convolution and algorithmic together and created kind of this hybrid thing, but I don't know. It contains 10 classic plate reverbs, and the specific technology that they've developed again allows for maximum flexibility that you would normally only find in an algorithmic reverb. I love using this on my vocals. This is actually mostly replacing the Lexicon plate that I have been using, but it's also great on guitars, on drums, sometimes even my solo flutes. It has like some nice colored presets in there. I don't really use it for orchestra though. And then now we get to the honorable mentions because there's a ton of other great stuff out there. We have a couple other Valhalla products that all go for $50. It's such an affordable company. I love that they make this high quality stuff and it's so affordable for a wide variety of people. So the one I use the most next to Valhalla Room is Valhalla Shimmer, which is kind of like a very ethereal, you would use that on like solo vocals if you want, very ethereal solo vocals, or you could use it on like heavily reverb drenched piano or solo flutes or something. It's just very, very dynamic and colored, and it's not a natural reverb. You use it for effect. I've also heard my colleagues talk about Valhalla Vintage Verb and Valhalla Plate. I don't have those two, but considering my experience with all Valhalla products so far, I'm assuming they're fantastic. And they all have demo versions if you want to try them out. Then another one that I have recently started using is Blackhole by Eventide. How do you say that company's name? It normally retailed for $199, so I never got it because it kind of is the same as Valhalla Shimmer, and that one's $50. So I was like, do I really need Blackhole? Because Valhalla Shimmer even has a Blackhole preset. So, you know, it's like that cosmic, ethereal kind of thing. And I was like, well, do I really need two of those? Another one that I haven't played enough with yet is Illusion also by Liquid Sonics. It costs $249 and is apparently a great all-rounder, also using their Fusion IR synthesis. But yeah, I haven't had enough time to play around with it yet, so I can't really make a judgment, but I would assume it's fantastic. And it also has a trial version. Again, before you buy it, you can just try it out for, I think, 2 weeks and then make your decision. And another one by Liquid Sonics that I also haven't played around with yet, I have it, but I have not found the time yet, is Reverberate. It retails for $99, is a convolution reverb, but again, using the Liquid Sonics Fusion IR thingy that helps with modulation and livening up the convolution. It has impulse responses you can download that come up to, I think, 96 kilohertz. So you can, if you frequently work in that sample rate, go for it, I guess. In film and TV, we usually work at 48 kilohertz. So it's not super useful, I think, for people working in film and TV. Or maybe it is, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. I have not played around with it yet. It's highly customizable, and again, 14-day trial before you buy it. You can see if this is something that would be useful for you. Then we got the Waves Renaissance Reverb. I haven't used that in a while. I got it as part of the Renaissance bundle, but I got the Renaissance bundle mostly for the Renaissance compressor and Renaissance Max. But it comes also with a reverb, and it's a very good reverb. I just haven't used it because I have other stuff that I like to use, but there's nothing wrong with it. And the whole bundle usually retails for, I think, $50 to $80. Now, Liquid Sonics and Slate Digital also made a collaborative thing called Verbsuite Classics, but it's subscription-based, and I hate subscriptions. I hate having to subscribe to audio software. I'd rather just own things. But so that exists. I have no experience with that. Apparently it's trying to emulate classic hardware reverbs, but I don't know. I haven't tried it. Then we got Altiverb by Audio Ease. It's definitely a widely used convolution reverb. Lots of people love this. I never really connected with this one. I don't know why. I'm not really into the sound. I could never make it work for myself. But then again, clearly from my examples, we have now discovered that I am more into algorithmic reverbs. So maybe that's just a taste thing. I don't know. It's clearly very widely used. A lot of people love it. So it's just not for me. I also think that $500 to $900 is a bit overpriced considering we have all these other options that are so much more affordable. And then we got East-West Spaces. It's also a convolution reverb. I never got into it, and I don't hear it mentioned very often from score mixers. I hear it mentioned a lot more from composers. I'm assuming it's because a lot of, especially beginner composers, use the Composer Cloud, and then you get East-West Spaces with it. I haven't played around with it. I don't really know it, so I can't really say how good or bad it is. So yeah, that's that. But I do think that the East-West Composer Cloud is one of the few subscription models that I would actually think is really, you get your bang for your buck, you know? And if you just get this for free, like with the subscription and all the samples, that's a good deal, you know? That's like, you can't complain. If you buy it, it's $160 apparently when it's on sale, and I feel like East-West is kind of always on sale. I don't know. I have not looked for a long time. Apparently the full retail price is $400, but yeah, I feel like if this is something you get with a subscription, then I mean, take it. Just, you know, why not? Why not? Now there's obviously also a ton of hardware reverbs. I've already mentioned the Bricasti, but that's not really what this video is about because most film composers don't use hardware reverbs. It's the score mixers that would be using hardware reverbs. We usually stick to software stuff. It's just easier. And also if you get a hardware reverb, you have to also get like a massive audio interface that can handle that. And you know, it's a lot of hassle. And we have such great software options that I feel like hardware reverbs, if you're into it, by all means, but I don't think it's a requirement at this point for composers. I think that's really a lot better used by actual mix engineers. Now, if you're tight on cash, I want to say this as well, your DAW reverb is perfectly fine. I have used the internal reverbs of first of Contact and then from Logic, what was that one called? I think Space Designer, but then also Cubase has an internal reverb. Every DAW has an internal reverb. That is perfectly fine. Especially at the beginning of your career or you're a student, you're tight on cash or something, just use whatever comes with your DAW and whatever comes with Contact. I mean, don't worry about it. You have so many things to invest in at the beginning that reverb should not be at the top of your list. Like if you're starting from scratch, I would first invest in a decent pair of headphones, a proper computer, some decent sample libraries, and then just use the plugins that come with your DAW at first. And then over time, you just start, you know, buying additional things to load into your DAW. I will actually link to a video from In The Mix down below, where he compares the DAW stock reverb with paid pro reverbs. And he also links to a bunch of free reverbs that are really good quality. So don't feel like you have to spend a sick amount of money on reverbs right at the beginning of your career. This is kind of more of a treat later on. There's also another thing I want to talk about because I got really excited about it. I've done this before and it's fantastic. You can just record an actual chamber reverb. If you have a bathroom, for example, great reverb. If you have a hallway or like a staircase or, you know, some place that reverberates a lot, you can just go there, play your music through speakers and record the reverb of that place. I was even at a composer studio that was in a house and the entire house was wired, so every room had outlets for for preamps and for microphones, so that they could basically record the reverb in every room, no matter where. And it was super easy. If you want, it sounds really good. I've done it a couple of times, and I mean, it's the real deal, right? So this is an option. So now let's get into how I use reverbs in my everyday composing in my template. So the first thing I do, since I have all these high quality reverbs, is I turn off the contact reverb or any other sample library reverb. If it's not a contact library, very often they still come with some kind of preset reverb in them. I just turn all of that off. Again, if you don't have a high-end reverb, you don't have to do that. You can just leave it on, use that, you're good. So there's two ways to apply reverb. There's a way to apply it through sends. That saves processing power and is the most common way of applying reverb. And you can apply reverb as an insert directly onto the instrument. So you can see here the way you apply reverb through sends is you create aux channels, or in Cubase they're called group channels, same thing. You load up your reverb and then you use sends on the instruments, in my case here the summed outputs, to apply reverb via sends, and you can then just dial it in by using decibel amounts in the sends. So this way you only have one reverb loaded and it gets applied to all of it, instead of having to load the reverb onto every single summed stem, which is first of all going to require a lot of processing power, especially if you use convolution reverbs. But also if you want to change something in the reverb, you have to change it in every single plugin, which you don't really want to do. This works really well for stuff you want to globally apply to everything. So in this case, the whole orchestra. And then of course you can apply it as an insert directly onto an instrument. I do that if I want a specific effect on something, like if I recorded my flute or my vocals or anything in particular and I want to use reverb more as an effect, you know, something like Valhalla Shimmer or Blackhole, or you know, anything super particular that I don't want applied to everything else, I just want it applied to that particular instrument, then I use inserts. Usually you use at least two reverbs. One reverb that is kind of to put everybody in the same room. So it's a very subtle reverb that you don't generally want to actively hear. And then a second one for coloring or livening things up or creating more depth or width, or you know, whatever you want to use reverb for, really. But generally on orchestral scores, unless you go for a very specific effect, you don't want to actively be able to hear reverb. Like when you mute it, there should just be a subtle difference in depth and color, but there should not be a massive difference in like wetness, for example. It should just be a very subtle difference, which is a mistake that a lot of beginners make. They just drench everything in reverb, and you can just almost actively hear the reverb more than the actual dry signal, and it just washes everything out and kind of makes it makes the lines very inaudible and very, you know, it makes the mix very muddy. So would not recommend doing that. A sort of ideal reverb tail for orchestra is 1.8 to 2 seconds. That's also what the bigger concert halls and scoring stages have, most of them anyway. But it's not a rule. Sometimes more sounds really cool too. I remember when I had a hardware reverb at one of the studios I worked at, I had a really long reverb tail and it sounded fantastic. So, you know, experiment with it. But if you need a starting point, 1.8 seconds to 2 seconds is kind of a good overall way to go first, and then go from there. As you can see here, I put an EQ before my reverbs. That is to control the frequencies that actually go into the reverb, because especially in full orchestral pieces, you don't necessarily always want all the frequencies to get reverb. Specifically, a lot of the higher frequencies, a lot of the really low frequencies. Not everything needs to enter the reverb, because whatever enters the reverb is gonna get enhanced. And so you want to be careful about that. You can also, usually if you look into the reverb, you can already see that there's often a high cut applied to the higher frequencies. That's because higher frequencies have less energy, so they don't travel as long and as far as lower frequencies. So those would go first, and so we usually kind of dial those down. They also tend to sound a little bit synthy, so, you know, kind of muting that a little bit at the top is usually a good idea. And then I put a dynamic EQ after my reverb. The reason for that is because sometimes what happens is everything sounds fine like in the first half of the piece, and then there's a huge crescendo and everything gets a little bit brighter, and then the reverb just kind of reacts by enhancing the brightness, and then everything is just too bright, for example. So then I can use a dynamic EQ by just having that kick in whenever the high frequencies reach a certain threshold. But you can do that with other frequencies as well. I have it the most in the higher frequencies, but if you realize that at some point in your piece there's just a weird frequency buildup that is enhanced by the reverb, you can just use a dynamic EQ to, you know, just get that out in those particular parts where the buildup is happening. The rest of the values can be dialed into taste. Really depends on the sound you're going for, and also how wet your libraries are out of the box to begin with. If you're new to this, you can also just leave it at the preset values for now and then just use them as a starting point while you're learning. That's what I did. If you want to know what the different reverbs mean, like hall, chamber, room, plate, spring, and all that, I'm going to link to a video from In the Mix in the description because it's explained there way better than I ever could. And I'd just be repeating what Michael is saying in his video and on his channel, and that's kind of pointless. He also kind of gives like a historic view on these things and how they came about and what they're for. So it's a fantastic video. I learned a lot from watching it, so highly recommend watching that video. I'll also link to a page from iZotope. They have this Learn tab on their website. I have pointed that out before. So much free information. It is insanity. They have a specific page called What is Reverb? And it's a fantastic page if you want to learn about it. And again, yes, some of it is showcasing things with their products, but it's universal. It's not... they're explaining things with their products, but you can apply to any other products as well. So yeah, reverb can be a great tool to add more depth and more color to your mixes, and generally to tie things together a little bit better, especially when we use sample libraries that were recorded in different spaces, or in my case, I have live recording, but then that live recording needs to get mixed into my stereo mockup that is mixing different libraries. So reverb is kind of a good way to get all that together into one space and make it seem like it all came out of the same space. And especially something like cinematic rooms is really great because in my case, again, yes, we have the surround live recordings, but we're mixing them into stereo mockups, so we have to be able to upmix those stereo files into surround files and then mix that with the live recording. So it's a whole science. And so having a good reverb that is tailored to those types of things is really great for score mixers. Again, not that important for composers because we don't usually do that ourselves. You can also mitigate those differences between sample libraries a bit more by utilizing different mic positions. I'll link to my video about mic positions in the description as well. But that plus reverb is really going to tie things together if you're concerned about these things. I mean, in general, you're going to have a certain taste anyway, so you will prefer either wet libraries or drier libraries. So they're probably going to gel anyway. Like, I prefer drier libraries, and so it's already... I already don't have to do a lot of work to make them work together in the first place, but mic positions and reverb can really tie it together further. I hope this was helpful, and now go practice.